And I grew up and I learned so much from Jerry and Paul, actually. They both were great mentors.
Hey Jim, thank you so much for having us here today. We really appreciate being here.
Oh, pleasure.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming.
Definitely, definitely. So the first question I want to ask, growing up as a musician in Virginia, the first instrument I ever learned how to play was guitar. And therefore the first accessory I ever needed were guitar strings, and therefore the first brand I ever knew growing up was the Dario. So I'm very curious to know what it's like to have your family associated with a household name and a worldwide brand.
Well, it's quite rewarding, actually, and we're very proud of it. It wasn't that way 40 years ago, and when we first introduced Dario as a brand of strings, my family has been making strings for generations, and my dad never used the family name on the strings because they were afraid that, an Italian name might not be accepted, geographically in the South or somewhere else, so they were always afraid to use their name. And then when we restarted this company in 1974, the brand Dario, was introduced. And I remember taking a trip to Sweden, and we weren't selling anything yet. And I took a trip to Sweden to source some high carbon steel wire. And I went into one of the music stores, and theirs was the 3 posters that I just designed, and our strings were there. And it was, quite a sense of accomplishment, And now you walk into just about any music store worldwide, and we have a significant share of the string wall and the rest of the accessories in the store. So it is, we're quite proud of it. It is quite rewarding.
So speaking of the generations of the Dario family, how many generations do we have working in Dario right now?
We have 2 generations that are active in the business right now, and they're the 3rd and 4th generations in America. So me being the only 3rd generation guy still active, my brother is just on the board and semi-active. He's been mostly retired. But in terms of the generation 4, we have quite a few family members, just like the Sam Ash Company.
Yeah,
quite
absolutely.
a few in the business. And what's really cool is our families have paralleled each other. And my grandfather was, close with Richie and Sammy's grandfather, and my father was close with Jerry and Paul, and so was I. And so there's this nice overlap, and we've kind of grown together. And we have to thank the folks at Sam Ash for always supporting our products. When we put out the Dario brand, they were one of the first to stock it.
Oh, that's great.
And they pushed our product from day one. And it's a great relationship. So family's a big deal for us in the business here, but it's also great when there's family at our customers as well.
Absolutely. So continuing with family, can you take us back? When did the Dario start? Where did it start? And then when did it move to New York?
Well, it is a kind of a fractured story. I researched the family history with a couple of consultants, and we built the family tree back to 1680. And they had to utilize church records because prior to the unification of Italy in 1864, all of the birth records were basically the baptism records at the churches. There was no municipality that had birth and death certificates. And when you baptized your child, the father had to fill out a form as to what his occupation was. So we were able to trace back the occupation of cordero, string maker, chord maker, all the way back to 1680, contiguously. Now, it's not the same business since then.
Sure.
Similar to the Zildjian family, it's not the same business since the 1400s, but it's the same family making the same product in different kind of, iterations of a business. So my grandfather came here in 1904, and he started importing strings from his family in Italy. And his business was, small. It was out of the home in Jackson Heights, Queens, right near LaGuardia Airport. And wasn't the airport yet when he came, obviously. But he started importing, and then during World War I, there were embargoes, and there was sinking ships and stuff. So he had an uncle here that knew the trade, and he taught him how to make strings and partnered with him. around 1917 through 22, 24, something like that. So it kind of, you know, we took the trade from Sale, Italy, and my grandfather learned it here, though. He didn't learn it there because he was only 14 when he came here. And,
Wow.
you know, he was basically in business when he was like 16 or 17 years old,
Wow.
you know, selling strings.
That's
so
amazing.
It's kind of amazing. There was a shortage of strings at that time, you know, so it was pretty easy. What's kind of cool is that our little town, Sale, there are 4 families that came from that tiny little town that are still making strings today. The Ian O'Mari Company up in Newburgh, New York, they come from the same town. And the Galley family, who's in Naples, they come from the same town. And then there's another one, the Durazio, small company that's, you know, still in the area there, but they make strings by hand, the old-fashioned way. And, you know, it was kind of a neat cottage industry that, you know, came here to America. My grandfather always had the shop in the basement of home. So every time I visited Grandma, I was a tinkerer. I would go in the basement, play with the machines they weren't using, and, you know, so it was basically in my blood from day one. So I learned a lot about machinery hanging around there, and now ended up designing machinery here when we really started to grow and expand. So, but it's in the family a long, long time.
What an amazing, rich history. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, if I can brag on you a little bit, one of the things I love about the Dario is how forward-thinking and innovative you are. Even to this day, you're still solving needs in the industry this day. The most recent in my mind as a guitar player is that I have a Taylor guitar. I love it. It's a great guitar. But putting a strap on it has been one of the most frustrating things until the invention of the cinch fit, which is
cool,
amazing. It's a great product.
And that was instigated by Janice Ian, who's a good friend. And she's for years says, Jim, you got to fix the strap problem. Such a pain when I'm on stage putting the strap on and off, you know. And other people, obviously, as well. Our artist relations guys all had the same input. But it was kind of interesting because to make her happy, I kind of designed that with our team and fooled around with it for a couple of years before we got it right.
Right.
And then, you know, so she was thrilled with it, and she actually goes out there and tells everybody about it, you know.
From the 1600s to 2018, we're still solving problems.
Yeah, we love solving problems. And
That's
it's,
amazing.
I have 3 full-time product engineers that work under me, and I do a lot of product design myself. In fact, this week I just designed some new plugs and was just going over the concepts with our guys to make a new kind of solderless, toolless connection kit.
Interesting.
So, and very low profile for pedal boards and stuff.
Oh, that's great.
So it looks really good. Just turn that over to our engineers. They'll finish it off. So I love doing that part. I love trying to solve problems. I love when people say, well, can you fix this? Can you make this better? You know, and we've got guys that are thinking the same way. So we have these vision meetings for each brand. We have a long list of crazy ideas and good ideas, and some never make it to the development stage. Some do, but we were always adding to that list, and we've got a lot of stuff in the queue all the time.
Right.
And there's a lot of problems to solve to really make it easier and better for musicians.
Sure.
And that's our goal.
That's awesome. Now, Jim, you touched on this a little bit, but being that both of our families have a rich history in New York, and New Yorkers, we love heritage, we love family. Can you expound a little bit on your parallel growth with Ash? And
yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in West Hempstead. Went to West Hempstead High School, and graduated high school in 1967. So when the Beatles and the British invasion came along, I kind of gave up my classical piano lessons and started teaching myself the guitar, and then eventually got into a band when I was 13 or 14. And we were pretty successful. So I learned how to run a business by running my band. And back then, you can actually get paid to play. Now you have to put a hat out and hope people give you a tip, right?
Right. Exactly.
It's kind of sad. But we used to get paid, you know, $25, $50 a guy, you know, back in the 60s. So whenever we had a good gig, the next Saturday we'd be in my friend's 55 Chevy up in the Hempstead store, and buying a new PA or buying a new amp or whatever, and Jerry was always there with Bernice, and he always took great care of us. I mean, we used to hang around in the store sometimes for 3, 4, 5 hours every weekend. So it kind of came like our, you know, our camp, you know. So, and I grew up and I learned so much from Jerry and Paul, actually. They both were great mentors. I learned so much from hanging around the stores, seeing that, oh gosh, all the accessories were hidden.
Yeah.
Right? They were in drawers, or
Okay.
you had to ask for them. And that's how all of this display stuff got created, was because I had that lucky experience of doing about 3 years of crawling around and seeing the dealers. And then we all, my brother and everybody, we listened to the feedback from our dealers and from our distributors. You know, we learned what the need was to actually elevate our brand. So when we would take our brand of strings and get it on the wall, we would outsell everybody because it was visible, right?
Right.
And if the packaging was cool and bright and, you know, informative, that helped as well. So it was a great learning experience, and Jerry was fantastic to me. He was kind of like a second dad, and, you know, you just
That's great.
always, you know, always had a smile on his face, you know that, and just always was so helpful for me. I think about all the times I went there, so he probably doesn't even remember, but he took the time to teach me stuff, and, you know, that to me is invaluable.
Yeah.
And we don't forget it.
That's great. So we touched on this a little bit, but is it fair to say that Dario makes accessories for every family of instrument that's out there?
Well, virtually. I mean, there are some things like trumpets. We don't make trumpet mouthpieces, and there's no consumable, you know, in a trumpet, right? And we don't make piano strings. We make harp strings, but we do pretty much cover almost every accessory category. And a lot of times, if we're not in a category, like 6 years ago or 7 years ago, we weren't in the capo business, right? And now we're like #2 in capos.
Yeah.
And that was because Ned Steinberg is a great friend, and we collaborate with Ned on a lot of accessory product design. We started designing capos together, and the next thing you know, we've got a line of 10, 12 great selling capos.
There you go.
You know, sell hundreds of thousands of them.
Wow.
You know, and it's because we designed a better mousetrap. You know, it's adjustable tension, it keeps the guitar in tune, you know, easy to use. The spring action works like a compound bow, so you don't, the amount of force you need to open and close it is much less than the force it's putting on the strings.
It's true.
And it's just head and shoulders better than what's out there. So we garner market share right away. And, you know, we love that kind of an interaction, you know.
Yeah, because you might not think you need a new capo until you see one that's just so much better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then everyone likes to leave one in every guitar case if they got more than one guitar.
Several,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, final question. We would be very hard-pressed to find another company that makes as many musical instrument accessories as Dario. Do you have a favorite accessory that you make? If you had to pick one?
Well, I mean, I have to say it's got to be one of our string products, like our Phosphor Bronze was so innovative, you know. When we introduced Phosphor Bronze in 1974, there was nothing like it, and it put us on the map. So, you know, I would have to say Phosphor Bronze is one. I mean, our Pro Winder is a cool accessory that I obsessed over for about 1.5 years before getting it out on the market, and that's one of our best-selling products, and we've redesigned it 3 or 4 times and made it better over the course of 20 years. But, you know, that's another one I would say is a favorite of mine.
That is great. Well, Jim, thank you so much for sitting with us. I really appreciate it. I'm
Pleasure.
very excited to take this tour.
Sure.
So let's go have a look.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Right.
Coming up, we finished our trip to Dario with a walk through the Evans Drumhead factory. Check it out.